Good morning, everyone. My name is Dakota Brazier, and I'm Minister McLeod's Senior Communications Advisor and Press Secretary. Thank you for joining us this morning. Following the announcement, the Minister will be taking questions from the media. If you have a question, please put your name and outlet in the chat bar on the side, and I will unmute you to ask your question. Just as a reminder, it will be one question, one. Go ahead, Minister.
Okay, thanks, Dakota. Colleagues, friends, and of course, members of the media, thank you very much for joining me here today. As you are well aware, I refer to this ministry as having a spectacular double bottom line. And I do so because we are an economic suite of sectors within tourism, hospitality, sports and recreation, and arts, heritage, and culture that represents in healthy times a $75 billion impact into our economy. I also talk about the social impact. You know, we represent the biggest brands in the world. We are the ultimate small business sector, but at the same time, on the social side, this ministry represents Canada's largest volunteer sector in the entire country. We also invest more in not-for-profits than anyone else, and that's why I'm here today. Today, I want to share the impact of COVID-19 on our philanthropic and not-for-profit sectors and what the ministry has done in order to support them during this critical time. First, I'd like to start off by saying that the ministry has decided to extend the application intake for both the Volunteer Service Awards as well as the Order of Ontario. Ontario's volunteers have always been the backbone of our communities, but never more important than this past year in the pandemic, which is why I'm asking all Ontarians to reflect on those who've made an indelible contribution into their own communities, supporting the important work that needed to be done during this pandemic, and to recognize those who've delivered on and led our communities during this time. Again, asking all Ontarians to consider nominating a deserving volunteer for recognition. That person could be the one that went above and beyond to help keep the food bank running in their local community. It could have been a person who was delivering Meals on Wheels or seniors meals to those who are isolated. It could also have been somebody who decided to show up day in, day out, despite the health climate out there, to deliver after school programming to vulnerable populations. That's the Ontario spirit that our Premier, Doug Ford, often talks about. And it is that Ontario spirit that the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries wants to amplify in this pandemic. We want to showcase those who have given us so much and have given and taken so little from themselves. The second reason I'm here today is to talk about Canada's largest not-for-profit sector, whether victim services, hospices, LGBTQ+ organizations, or arts and cultural organizations that mean so much to so many. They have all suffered through the pandemic, which is why the ministry and our agency, the Ontario Trillium Foundation, created an $83 million Resilient Communities Fund in order to support these not-for-profit sectors. Today, I'm announcing $42 million to 559 not-for-profits to help them adapt to the challenges of the pandemic with grants of up to $150,000. This will help them to reimagine programming, support the physical and mental well-being of their staff and their volunteers. It will also help them purchase PPE and renovate their facilities. I want to provide you with a few examples of how these grants are going to help in every part of Ontario. First, we'll be supporting Egal Canada Human Rights Trust. They're based out of Toronto. They'll be provided with a $7,800 grant to obtain legal assistance to update workplace policies and procedures, prioritizing the safety of their staff, their clients, and their volunteers. We'll be supporting an organization I've had the privilege of working with for the past 15 years, the Youth Services Bureau of Ottawa. Their $150,000 Resilient Communities Fund will allow them to acquire services of an IT expert and hiring an IT staff member to build a reliable, secure, integrated online platform to provide critical services virtually to vulnerable children and youth. We will be supporting the Adoption Council of Ontario in Markham Stouffville. They will receive $142,000 Resilient Communities grant that will assist them with staffing to develop fundraising strategies and purchase donor retention software and learning management systems. The Milton Film Festival will receive $6,200 to allow them to facilitate online film screenings to exhibit local, Canadian, and international films not available in the area, as well as promoting local filmmaking. The Career Education Council of Guelph, Wellington, and Dufferin will receive $131,000 to support staffing to develop virtual sponsorship activities, developing career exploration portals, collecting data, and researching design development. The Women and Children Shelter of Barrie in the Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte area will receive $100,000. This will allow them to renovate a 35-year-old industrial kitchen, creating physical distancing space for women to participate in food mentorship programming and purchasing a commercial-sized refrigerator and freezer. And the Rapport Youth and Family Services of Brampton Center will receive $107,000 to develop a 5-year strategic plan for delivering programs and creating mental health kits for young people. All of these organizations, well over 500 of them, are the backbone of their communities, either looking and eyeing to support culture and arts opportunities, supporting sports and recreation, encouraging tourism, or more importantly, protecting our most vulnerable who may be suffering from human trafficking or violence against women, mental health issues, and of course, other issues with respect to diversity and inclusion. I'm very proud to be working with the Ontario Trillium Foundation as our agency to deliver on these important grants. I'm also proud that my ministry oversees the recognition of Ontario's finest citizens, whether that's through the Volunteer Service Awards or through the Order of Ontario. I'm happy to take any questions, and I simply ask that you all too consider those volunteers in your community who are going above and beyond, and think about how they might be best recognized through their Ontario government within this ministry. Thank you, Dakota.
Thank you very much. As a reminder, if you do have a question, please put your name and outlet in the chat bar on the side, and I will unmute you. Minister, your first question comes from Justin at CHCH. Justin, you have been unmuted. You should be able to accept on your end.
All good, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. Nice to see you again. First, I just wanted to start with the CFL. It seems as though they've had 4 of the 6 provinces give verbal sign-off on their health and safety return to play protocols, and Ontario is one of the outstanding ones. What are the reasons behind that?
We're not simply in a position to sign off on a return to play, whether that is the CFL or the OHL at this moment. We were getting close toward the end of March, but I think it's been very clear that the health conditions across Ontario, the hospital capacity that we're seeing, the limitations on our ICU capacity, and simply the numbers in Ontario right now are not at a place where we can sign off on return to play. We were close, but the ground has shifted significantly. I know that you're all following the news out of Queen's Park, and you've been seeing that we've had, in some cases, 10 and 12-hour cabinet meetings looking at the modeling, and we continue to look at that. I will say on a bright side is that the work that I'm doing at the Jobs and Recovery Committee of Cabinet does include what a framework would look like for these types of reopening at the appropriate time. But unfortunately, just given the healthcare situation we find ourselves in now, that has all been delayed.
Totally understandable. And I just wanted to shift gears a little bit to the OUA. You gave some scholarship funding to the OHL, I believe it was $2.35 million. Do you foresee doing something similar with the OUA to help out those athletes that have lost some scholarship money?
Yeah, we continue to look at how we can best support sport, and I'll have more to say about that in the coming weeks when it's appropriate, in terms of how we will amplify sport as we build back stronger and better. We will continue to work with colleges and universities ministry to see how we can best support athletics at that level. I do know in that particular organization that we do fund them. They have received $250,000 from the ministry, which is an increase during COVID-19 of over $34,000. So, we have thousands of stakeholders and industry associations that we're working with. And as you know, our sectors were hit first hardest and will take the longest to recover. And so the longer we're in the pandemic, the more we have to figure out how we're going to support them all. At the end of the day, we know that the Ontario that we all want to live and reside in continues to support both of these not-for-profit sectors that we're announcing today, but also those sports and recreation facilities. And I'll just add on this, we have announced significant funding for sport, and there will be an intake through the Ontario Trillium Foundation for sport, for organizations, as well as additional capital funding through this ministry that will be forthcoming as well.
Thank you, Minister.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Justin. Minister, your next question comes from David at QP Briefing. David, I have unmuted you. You can go ahead with your question.
Hey, David.
Hi there, Minister. Hope you're doing well. For the Ontario Hockey League, time seems to be crucial here because we are running out of time to have a season. The draft for the NHL is scheduled for late July. What kind of timeline would you need to get a season in there? And do we have sufficient time to have a season?
Look, David, it's my hope. I had hoped that we would have been in a position at the end of March. However, the health conditions shifted literally within days underneath our feet. So we have gone back to the OHL to look at what a different scenario could look like on go forward. We also are looking at frameworks for other leagues, but simply at the moment, just given the current health circumstances, it would be irresponsible for us at the moment to greenlight that play. And we're starting to see some outbreaks in other leagues. Outbreaks even within the NHL. And so we just really need to be very mindful of these young athletes and their long-term health and their abilities. So again, the ground shifted within days. And so we are now trying our level best to find a solution where they would be able to put in some time. And so my team is working with the OHL right now on what that might look like and when that might look like. Can you give some more details on what that solution might look like, and on health levels? Certainly people are very concerned right now. Are there certain levels that the province would need to reach to make you comfortable to have players playing again? Yeah, look, so first of all, we are in a stay-at-home order. And so we are guided by Dr. David Williams and the Chief Medical Officer of Health. And until there is a sign-off by the health table, there will not be a resumption of play. That is not my decision or Doug Ford's decision or the Cabinet's decision. It's a decision we take together with the Chief Medical Officer of Health. There is no level of comfort there. What format this may take is still under discussion. And the process by which that would happen would be obviously working with the OHL, my team, as well as the Ministry of Health to see what health will be comfortable with. And there will be a lot of going back and forth in order to ensure, a number of things. We've dealt with this with the NHL and the AHL, and certainly with our high performance athletes as well. You look at the number of people that can be in a building, which cohorts are able to mix, what the level of sanitation is, what are the rigorous testing protocols, making sure that if there is going to be some hub or a bubble, that the athletes would enter the facility clean, i.e. not carrying COVID-19, then strict adherence to the rules and procedures. And so I felt that we had a place that we were able to land on. And then within 2 days, the numbers in Ontario spiked and we were in a stay-at-home order. And we saw, rather than loosening some restrictions within the economy, we saw enhanced restrictions. We've now been in a position where many chief medical officers of health across the province wanted to close schools, and we made the decision as a government this week to do that. So these are all the very difficult conversations, but necessary ones for us to have.
Thank you. Minister, your next question comes from Natalia at CBC Ottawa. Natalia, you've been unmuted. You can go ahead with your question.
Hi, Minister. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Natalia, thank you. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, you too. So on this announcement today, could you give a little bit more details on how these particular NFPs were chosen for this funding?
Yeah, so what happens, we have grant review teams across Ontario. So we would be in Ottawa in the Champlain region. They would have an organization, a chair, and several different appointees. They would receive packages based on scoring from our team at the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and then would be selected by them and ultimately go to our province-wide board to make the final selections. So what's interesting about this is, although I fund all of this through the ministry, it is there is no political decision making. All of these grants were chosen on merit with high scores, and will do great impact. Now, there's a couple incredible ones in the city of Ottawa. So Voice Found, who does a lot with supporting those who have been human trafficked, have received a resiliency fund. I mentioned the Youth Services Bureau, who does a lot with suicide prevention, mental health, and addictions counseling for our vulnerable youth. And so these are the types of programs that will be supported. Recognizing too, and this is a bit lengthy of an answer, but I think it's really important that this ministry has been monitoring, given the reach we have been monitoring the impact of philanthropy and volunteerism during the pandemic. And so we are totally and fully committed to ensuring that these organizations that contribute so much to the community get the funding that they definitely need in order to continue to support the initiatives. Nelson House in Ottawa also has received support. So it just gives you a sense of the commitment we have to making sure that those not-for-profits who are helping vulnerable populations continue to get the support they need.
Okay, thank you. And we did a story a few weeks ago about some NFPs that were having difficulty, and they were asking for federal funding. Have you been speaking with your counterparts on the federal side about what more can be done?
We're going to have that conversation. I can tell you, I've been monitoring, just because of the way this ministry is, whether it's sports and recreation or your local archives or museums. You're looking at a high degree of volunteerism, and also, many of our museums and others require philanthropic gestures of financial resources. And so we have been starting to study that, and I think that the conversation is going to be very important at a federal level. We should have a national conversation about this. I always say within our ministry, and I've been saying it since the pandemic, what does our Ontario look like 18 months from now? I know we sure as heck want to see kids sports. I know we want to see kids dance lessons. I know that we want to see our iconic institutions protected. And I know that we want to make sure that our food banks, our legions, all of those vital public services that are delivered from not-for-profits are still there. So we've always been challenging the ministry on that. And so I think it's important that we have that conversation at a federal level. And I'll just say tonight, all of the tourism ministers are meeting. And I also do meet regularly with my federal counterpart at Heritage, who also has responsibility for sport.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Natalia. I think you're on mute, Dakota.
I think Minister McLeod is introducing me.
Oh, he was just introducing
Go ahead, John.
you. How you doing, John?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, thanks.
My first question is about the OHL. Shocking.
Oh no, you shock me all the time. You and David Haynes. You should just meet before I get on the call with you guys.
Who's to say that we don't?
Oh, okay. Collusion at its worst.
Commissioner David Branch, well before the pandemic, was always very concerned with the health of his players. He always made the point that most OHL players do not go on to play professional hockey, that they are going on to be doctors, lawyers, businessmen. So I'm curious, given that the major issue is an issue of safety, what have the conversations been like with Commissioner Branch and other OHL officials?
Look, I can tell you that our teams meet frequently, sometimes several times a week, looking at the health of the league, the health of the players, what those opportunities are on a go forward. Our most recent budget, if passed, will have a number of different opportunities for reskilling students. In addition, as you know, we did support the OHL's scholarship program and felt that that was necessary, given we do want to continue to ensure that if some of these players choose a life after hockey, or it's chosen for them, that they do have something to fall back on. And look, I grew up in a hockey family. Many of my friends ended up playing either in the O or the Q, and the three brothers, actually the Sim brothers from New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, they played up here. One went on to the NHL, the other went on to a great career in financial services. And so you want to make sure that that all of our athletes, whether that's in the OHL or it's our university sports, can recover from this pandemic, and not just in the physical sense, but also from the mental health side and from their own economic viability. I find this ministry so interesting because whether you're an artist, an athlete, or anything else, really, you both have that. They're all part of that double bottom line where they provide a social output, but also they're all entrepreneurs in their own way.
Today's announcement was about releasing funds for volunteer organizations and volunteerism. Obviously, volunteer hours is an important part of the high school education system here in Ontario. How important is it to create more volunteer opportunities, given that a lot of high school students are going to miss more than a year of volunteer hours?
Yeah, look, I'm dealing with this right now as a mother of a 16-year-old daughter who, now is out of school and trying to find volunteer hours. We were trying to get her to support the Barhaven Food Cupboard, but again, their own health and safety protocols have limited that. I can tell you, I continue to monitor the impacts of volunteerism and the charitable sector, just given how important they are for all of us. But it's going to be one that we'll have a conversation with the Ministry of Education on. So often what we do in this ministry does take on a whole of government approach, simply because we are in every single community across the province.
There we go. Thank you, Minister. Your next question comes, I'm off mute this time. Your next question comes from Jacob at ONN TV. Jacob, you have been unmuted and you can ask your question.
Hi, Jacob.
You'll have to accept on your end, Jacob.
Sorry about that. My question was just, with the Ontario Hockey League still seeming to be at a standstill, what steps do the OHL and the government need to take to make some type of season happen?
Well, we need to make sure that that the conditions are right, where we can actually assemble people. Right now, we're at a stay-at-home order, and that's very difficult. So we continue to have that dialogue. So when the conditions change, we will have a safe environment for those players. As I said, I believe we had landed in a very good spot, and the ground shifted below our feet almost overnight, within 2 days actually of settling on what I thought was going to be a workable solution. So we continue to monitor the health and safety of Ontarians. We are obviously right now trying to limit the mobility of Ontarians so that we can limit the spread of COVID-19 as well as the variants of concern. And so the work, as I say, is ongoing between my ministry, the Premier's office, Ministry of Health, and of course our officials at the OHL. And so no real update today. I'd hope to update you at the end of March. But again, just given the conditions out there, it just would not be appropriate to put these young players at risk.
Follow up?
So you would say then it was the stay-at-home order that essentially put a pause on the Ontario Hockey League, and once this order has been taken off the table, do you think the league could proceed with a season?
I would say the rapid increase of COVID-19, the capacity within our hospitals, many of them are over capacity, the stress on our ICU units across Ontario, the stress on our healthcare system contributed to a stay-at-home order that has prevented us from proceeding. And we will continue to look at different options when the health conditions are right. But we will not be putting young athletes at risk. And I know we will continue to work with our OHL to see how we can, accommodate something at the appropriate time. But simply right now, when we're closing schools and hospitals are at 120, 130% capacity, I really feel that it would be irresponsible to congregate any type of athlete at this moment. Without rigorous standards and protocols.
Thank you. Minister, your last question comes from Randy at 93.1 The Border. Randy, I have unmuted you.
Hey, Randy.
There you are.
Hi, Minister. I won't ask you about the OHL because we don't have an OHL team here in Fort Francis, and everybody here cheers for the Jets, and I don't understand why.
Yes, we'll have to ask Rickford about that.
I do have a question though related to sports, and that's amateur sports, so like minor hockey. When the lockdown happened here in Fort Francis, it was kind of devastating, the fact that we had no cases and our hockey ended up getting shut down. I guess looking ahead, if you can, how hopeful are you that we're not going to go through scenarios like this next winter that's going to impact all sorts of sports and keep children at home doing nothing?
Yeah, so I'll add 2 quick points and then I'll talk a little bit about a process. So first one is obviously we need to contain the spread of COVID-19 and the covariants, and we want to be in a position, hopefully, with vaccines in people's arms, so that that there is a limit to that transmission, particularly in communities that don't have a lot of hospital capacity such as yours. And then secondly is a reopening framework. And so I'll have more to say in the weeks ahead on what that looks like, but the work is being done in terms of what kind of thresholds and criteria would be required in order to flick the switch and get kids and athletes back. And look, I know as a mother of a hockey player myself, this season, when depending on where we were in the orange or the red or the gray, the conditions on her team either changed to certain kids being allowed to go to practice, to the one when they were able to actually do some scrimmaging. So I know it's been a disruptive year, but I do encourage all Ontarians to take their health, both their physical and mental well-being, seriously during this time. And we do have many resources on the Ontario website for mental health supports, particularly for our youth.
On this announcement today, the money that you've handed out, and given the times that we're facing now, it would appear that many of these projects aren't going to happen this year. Do they have the right to hold on to the money and then do these projects maybe next year?
A lot of them will be able to do, particularly those that are doing virtual IT capacity building, will be able to start. They have within the next 12 months to do it. If you're referring, for example, to those that are doing more construction-related issues, those at the moment are probably able to continue. So we know that many of these projects are ones that will make or break. And I'll go back to the one in Barrie at the women's shelter, where allowing, renovating a 35-year-old kitchen to allow these mothers to have some a cooking experience by physically distancing and getting them a new refrigeration unit. As the former Minister of Women's Issues, going into many of those facilities across Ontario, you recognize, how limited in space some of them are and how necessary investments are for them. And so I'm particularly proud of the investments we're making to those in vulnerable populations. And I highlighted, I think, about 8 today that are great, but we've also done it with with sports and culture as well. And there will be more money coming. The Trillium Foundation has an annual operating budget of $103 million through this ministry. And I was able to secure in the last budget, not the one that we recently had, an additional $105 million to support more organizations that way. And so we want to make sure that, the high level message today is sort of volunteer and not for profit, but at the really grassroots level, the announcement today is talking about volunteers who make the biggest difference in our communities and the not-for-profits who they support getting into vital programming that really helps us have a great society. And so thank you for that. And I'm not sure if there was any other questions or if that about wraps her up.
That's about all the time we have for questions today, Minister. I'll turn it back over to you for closing remarks before we finish.
All right. Well, listen, thanks, everyone. I see Raphael there. I bet you he had a quick question on the OHL for me, too. But it was really nice to connect with all of you. I do really want to encourage you to stay safe. I've read my mind. You, David, and John are going to all have to have a Zoom with me one day when we've got this all dealt with. But it's really nice to connect with you. I really am concerned about the health and safety and well-being of our athletes. But I think today's announcement about volunteerism, philanthropy, and not-for-profits really does speak to the Ontario spirit the Premier often refers to. I just want all of those volunteers and not-for-profits to know that the work they do has not gone unnoticed, and that the work that they do is celebrated by myself, our government, and this ministry. So thanks very much, Dakota, and we'll look forward to connecting with all of you at a safer time.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Have a great day.